question is the unasked one. In Collins's book, in chapter 1, he deals with holy love. And I want us to see that every theology, whether it be deism, whether it be pantheism, whether it be Calvinism, any kind of theology, Catholicism, has a doctrine of God that centers in on one of his attributes. And for Wesleyans, that attribute is holy love. It's different, as we said, for Calvinism, because they see that God is sovereign, and that is the supreme attribute, and so they may focus in on the fact that he's governor, or they may focus in on his sovereignty. Deism typically focuses in on the fact that God is the creator, and he created and then he let the world alone. Pantheism tends to focus in on the fact that God is immanent but not transcendent, and as his immanence, his closeness to us, can be seen and felt much as the Force in Star Wars. If you've gone to see the recent Star Wars movie, and I know that I have, it's a God that is very immanent, very close, very personal, not personable in the sense of knowing us as persons, but personal in the sense of being right here with us and part of us. But for Wesleyanism, as we stated before, it is holy love. Now, it is not just love by itself, because that can just become kind of mushy, gooey gunk, for lack of a better word. I know that's not a theological term, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. Holiness, if it left without love, can be strictly law-based. You have to obey, you have to obey, you have to obey. But it is holy love, a love that transforms us, a love that demands us to be holy and yet is tempered. You might look at it as the steel glove, a steel hand inside of a velvet glove, that kind of approach. A holiness that is undergirded and supported and covered by love. It is not holy and love on a continuum either. And sometimes we get that idea as we read different Wesleyan authors that some will emphasize holy. He is holy and therefore he is to be obeyed. And others will emphasize he is love, and then there'll be others on a continuum somewhere in between. And I would contend, as Collins does, that it is not a continuum. It is a both and. And we will see this again and again in Wesley's theology. It is not going to be either or. It will be both and. And this is the genius of Wesley's theology. And again, we will see this several times as we go through his theology using Collins's book as a lens. Most of the American culture has contended that God is holy and therefore is unapproachable. And that unapproachableness is what has brought out so much deism as we discussed in class. That's just a minor thought on the end. Underneath holy love, Collins points out that Wesley has 4 essential attributes of God, and I believe these to be very critical, and certainly they were critical in Wesley's thought, as Collins points out. The first is that he is eternal, that he is marked in eternity. This is one of those concepts that makes your mind hurt. Frankly, God's omniscience and God's omnipresence is easier to get under our minds around than this. But to get our minds around the fact that God is timeless, that he is not held in the space-time continuum, if we can use the science fiction analogy that we started a while ago. He's not held captive to that, but rather he is in the past, in the present, and in the future at the same time. And as we're going to discuss here in a few moments, that's not just true with time, but it's harder for us to get our minds around it in time, because he is bigger than our linear time. He is the I am, He is the I was, and He is the I will be, all at the same time. And that allows several brilliant practical applications that we will discuss. One of those in our discussion questions for this week. But He not only is eternal, but He's also omnipresent. Not only is He not limited time-wise, He's not limited space-wise. Our whole space-time continuum, He does not live in, but rather He is everywhere at the same time all at once. Now that's hard to imagine when we look at pictures of the Hubble Space Telescope and we see one picture reported to be thousands upon thousands, maybe 1 million galaxies in that one photograph. Certainly, that is the view which we're looking at here. He is in all of those places, around all of those stars, in all of those galaxies, and all of those untold kinds of places at the same time. And that's the wonder of God. That not only does He reside in a place that we may call heaven, but rather heaven is where He is allowed to be seen, and that can be anywhere. He is omnipresent. He's also omniscient, meaning He knows everything. And that really is another hard concept to get around, especially if we don't have eternal, that concept, well in our minds, or that attribute well in our minds. Because He's omniscient. He's everywhere at the same time, and every time at the same time, all at once. So He knows everything. He knows the decision that I will make for lunch. He knows the decision that I will do for dinner. He knows it all at once and the same time. He's omniscient. And He's omnipotent. He is not limited by power. And by this we mean there's certain things that He will not do. He has said, for instance, in the Scriptures, that He will not destroy the earth again by water. Okay? But that's a self-limiting thing. What we're talking about here is He's not limited by His essence. He's not limited by who He is. He is simply chosen to be limited, or not chosen to be limited at all. And those are the things that are important as we look at Wesley's theology. That if there's any limits in God, it is a self-limiting. It is not a limiting by His being, by who He is. I hope you found this lecture helpful as we understand and go through Collins's book. If not, then I hope it hasn't been an entire waste of your time, because I've enjoyed just talking about who God is. And I hope, above and beyond all things, it is my desire in this class that you catch my enthusiasm for who God is and for sharing about who He is. Because truly, God, the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, the three persons and one substance, truly, that God is worthy of all praise.